I reconstructed the tragic accident of Air India Flight 171 and described what happened in this video. Aircraft accidents are very rare, but when they happen, there's a lesson to ensure that new occurrences don't happen again. Follow the report and subscribe to the channel. The sun was still scorching over the airport as a large commercial jet slowly taxied toward the runway. Inside the cabin, over 230 passengers prepared for a long international journey. None of them could imagine that this would be the beginning of a tragic end. At 1:38 p.m., the roar of the engines filled the air. The aircraft accelerated, lifting off the ground with the elegance that always amazes those watching from below. Everything seemed normal, but just seconds after takeoff, something inexplicable happened. Witnesses on the ground reported hearing a loud bang, followed by a trail of smoke. The plane, still climbing, began to lose lift rapidly. The nose pitched downward, and what should have been a safe climb became a sudden, uncontrollable descent. Inside the cockpit, alarms screamed. Warning sounds, overlapping voices, commands, and alerts filled the air. A distress call was sent out, but was drowned by the chaos. There was no time. The aircraft was only a few hundred feet above the ground when it began falling, completely out of control. Outside, residents watched in horror as the aircraft approached, slicing through the sky like a falling spear. The impact was devastating. The jet collided directly with a residential building, destroying part of university campus. The fuselage broke into multiple sections. The explosion was heard for miles. Fire consumed everything. The wings, filled with tens of thousands of liters of fuel, fed a firestorm that engulfed not only the plane but also buildings and vehicles nearby. Inside the cabin, there was no chance. The impact was so violent that seatbelts, seats, and even structural parts were ripped apart. Screams merged with the sounds of destruction. For the passengers, there was no time to react. On the ground, dozens of people living in the area also lost their lives. Buildings collapsed. Students who were in their rooms or classrooms were caught by surprise, with no chance to escape. The fire spread rapidly, leaving a trail of destruction and despair. Despite the horror, humanity emerged. Locals rushed toward the burning wreckage, tried to save anyone they could. Men and women smashed windows, climbed unstable structures, and pulled survivors from the rubble whenever there were any. Miraculously, one person survived the impact. Thrown from the aircraft as the fuselage broke apart, they landed on a grassy area, far from the fire and main debris. Despite injuries, the survivor managed to crawl to safety before being found by rescuers. Emergency teams arrived quickly, but the scene was apocalyptic. The flames took hours to control. Firefighters, paramedics, and volunteers worked tirelessly, recovering bodies, fighting the fire, and stabilizing what was left of the buildings. The air was thick with the smell of burning fuel, melted plastic, and charred flesh. The streets were packed with ambulances, fire trucks, and emergency vehicles. Helicopters hovered above, capturing images that, within minutes, spread across the world. By the end of the day, the tragedy was confirmed. Everyone on board, except for one sole survivor, had lost their lives. On the ground, dozens more were killed. The total number of victims exceeded 270, their lives abruptly and brutally cut short. The wreckage was scattered across a massive area. What was once a modern, magnificent aircraft was now just a pile of twisted metal, burned seats, destroyed luggage, and memories that would never be recovered. Investigations began immediately. The black boxes were recovered from the debris and sent for analysis. Early reports suggested a catastrophic engine failure shortly after takeoff, possibly a dual loss of power or a critical malfunction in the flight control system. Other theories emerged: problems with flap settings, premature retraction, human error, mechanical failure, or even structural failure. What was certain is that, within less than 2 minutes of takeoff, the flight's fate was sealed. Families of the victims were devastated. Many were waiting at the destination, unaware that they would never see their loved ones again. Others were still at the departure airport, watching in disbelief as the news unfolded before their eyes. The airline quickly issued a statement, offering condolences, compensation, and support to the families. Local authorities declared days of official mourning. The grief spread not just through the city, but across the entire country. Around the crash site, impromptu vigils appeared. Candles, flowers, photos of the victims, and farewell messages covered the charred walls. Residents gathered to pray, cry, and pay their respects. Newspapers around the world splashed the images: the broken fuselage, the fire consuming everything, the faces of those who perished. Witnesses gave harrowing accounts of what they saw, scenes that felt like something out of a nightmare. "It felt like the sky was tearing apart," said one resident. Another recalled, "I heard a boom, ran outside, and saw the plane already falling, engulfed in flames." The lone survivor, still in shock, described seeing the cabin light up in red, hearing alarms, and suddenly everything went dark. When they woke up, they were on the ground, surrounded by debris, unable to believe they were still alive. Authorities promised a thorough investigation and stricter safety measures. But for the families, no explanation would ever be enough. No technical report could ever fill the void left by so many lives abruptly stolen. The crash site turned into a memorial. Street corners once full of life now bore the scars of fire, broken concrete, and the painful memories of the day the sky opened up for tragedy. And as the investigations continue, the pain remains, along with the silence and the eternal question that echoes in the hearts of everyone affected. Why? A question that may never find an answer deep enough to bring comfort to those left behind.